My boss ordered me to work during my honeymoon. I resigned instead. My email went viral, and now his entire company is crumbling. I 32M never imagined that a simple resignation email would become the catalyst for the complete downfall of an entire company. Yet here I am, looking back on a series of events that escalated far beyond anything I could have predicted. It all began 3 years ago when I accepted a position at a mid-sized software development firm that had managed to carve out a solid reputation in our industry. The company boasted around 80 employees, was known for delivering high-quality work to clients, and had an almost unbroken record of meeting tight deadlines. At the time, I was genuinely thrilled to join. The salary was attractive, the projects were engaging and offered a chance to expand my skills, and the team seemed professional and dedicated. My direct supervisor appeared reasonable enough, and the CEO himself would occasionally walk through our department, offering thumbs-up gestures and brief words of encouragement to keep morale high. But it didn't take long for the shine to wear off. Within just 6 months, I began to notice deep cracks in the company's structure and culture. Our development team was constantly understaffed compared to the workload we were expected to handle. When a senior developer left, they simply didn't replace him. Instead, his entire set of responsibilities was distributed among the remaining team members. It happened again when another senior developer left, and the same pattern followed. What was supposed to be a manageable 40-hour work week quietly transformed into 60 hours on a regular basis, often stretching to 70 or more during crunch periods. Every time I raised concerns, my supervisor would brush them off with lines like, "It's just temporary. We're hiring soon." But the hires never came. Despite the constant pressure and the slow erosion of work-life balance, I stuck around. Partly because I was learning a lot, and partly because my personal life was actually thriving during this period. I had met my now wife in those early months, and she quickly became my biggest support system. She worked in marketing and was all too familiar with toxic work environments, so she understood the strain I was under. Over dinner, we would often commiserate about unreasonable deadlines, middle-of-the-night emails, and the relentless expectation to go above and beyond without additional compensation or even recognition. Last year, I proposed to her, and she said yes without hesitation. We set our wedding date for early summer and began planning one of the most important moments of our lives. I submitted my time-off request a full 6 months in advance, clearly stating that I would be taking 3 weeks away from work, 2 weeks for the wedding and our honeymoon in Greece, and 1 week after that to settle back in before returning. My supervisor approved the request, although his expression was less than enthusiastic. He reminded me to tie up all loose ends before leaving, which I fully intended to do. As the wedding drew near, the pressure at work intensified dramatically. A major client had signed on for a complete overhaul of their system, and the timeline they wanted was, quite frankly, ridiculous. I was assigned as the lead developer on the project, despite my clear protests about my upcoming absence. The CEO personally told me, "You're the best person for this. We're counting on you. Don't worry, we'll manage while you're gone." That last sentence would prove to be a lie. 2 weeks before the wedding, my supervisor called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable, barely meeting my eyes. "We need to talk about your time off," he said. He explained that the project timeline had shifted, and they needed me to be available during my honeymoon. When I asked him what that meant, he casually suggested that I check my email daily and maybe join a call or two. I reminded him that I would be in remote parts of Greece, where internet access would be spotty at best. He smiled thinly and replied, "Then find better spots. This project can make or break our relationship with this client. Everyone needs to pull their weight." I left his office furious but kept my mouth shut. That evening, I told my fiancée, and she immediately suggested that I start looking for another job. I agreed in principle, but with the wedding and honeymoon looming, I decided to postpone any career moves until after our return. 3 days before our wedding, the CEO himself called me while I was at the venue finalizing arrangements. Without any warm-up, he said, "I understand you're hesitant about staying connected during your trip, but this isn't optional. We need you to check in daily and put in at least 4 hours of work each day. The client wants updates, and no one else understands the code base like you do. That last statement lit a fire under me. That's because you've never replaced the senior developers who left, I snapped. I've been telling you for months that we need better documentation and cross-training. He cut me off immediately. That's not the issue right now. The issue is that you're abandoning us at a critical time. I thought you were a team player. I took a deep breath. I put in my request 6 months ago. You approved it. He replied coldly. Circumstances change. Business needs come first. That's the reality of the professional world. My response was simple. I'm getting married in 3 days. I'll be on my honeymoon. I won't be working. There was a pause. Then he said, I suggest you think carefully about your future with this company. The threat was crystal clear. The next morning, I got an email from HR requesting a pre-departure meeting. When I walked in, my supervisor, the CEO, and the HR director were all there. The HR director spoke smoothly. Given the critical nature of the project, we're asking you to be available for work during your absence. If this isn't possible, we may need to reconsider your role and potentially your position. I looked at each of them, people who had extracted every drop of energy from me for years while promising things would improve. Let me be clear, I said calmly. I'm getting married. I'm going on my honeymoon. I will not be checking email, taking calls, or writing code during that time. If that's a problem, I'm happy to tender my resignation right now. The CEO leaned forward. No one's asking you to resign. We're asking you to be a professional. Many people work during their honeymoons. It's not unusual. I replied, it's unusual to me, and to my fiancée, who's expecting my full attention during one of the most special times of our lives. The meeting ended in a stalemate. They told me to think about it and give them my decision by the end of the day. Back at my desk, I didn't need to think. I began typing my resignation letter, professional, direct, and unapologetic. I cited the company's attempt to force me to work during my approved honeymoon, the years of understaffing, overwork, and broken promises. Before sending it, I forwarded myself copies of all relevant emails, my original time-off request and approval, project timelines showing we were understaffed, emails where I'd raised concerns, and the latest meeting invitation from HR. Then I sent the letter to my supervisor, the CEO, and HR, copying my entire team with a note saying I was sorry to leave them in the lurch, but couldn't continue under these conditions. Within an hour, my access was cut off, and security escorted me out. My supervisor watched silently, his face a mixture of anger and panic. He knew exactly how much knowledge was walking out the door. The wedding was beautiful. The honeymoon in Greece was everything we'd hoped. Crystal clear waters, incredible food, and absolutely no work emails. When we returned, my inbox and LinkedIn were exploding. My resignation email had gone viral after a former colleague posted a screenshot to social media. Thousands shared stories of employers invading personal time. Business journals and industry blogs picked it up. My former company was being publicly shamed for its toxic culture. Job offers poured in. Within 2 weeks, I accepted a position at a company known for its work-life balance. Meanwhile, my former employer was imploding, the client pulled out, other clients asked questions, employees resigned in waves. 3 months later, my former supervisor told me over coffee that the CEO still blamed that email instead of years of mismanagement. 6 months later, the company was acquired in a fire sale. The CEO was forced out. Looking back, I never wanted to destroy a company. I just wanted my wedding and honeymoon without work interruptions. But by holding my ground, I exposed a rot that had been festering for years. My wife jokes our honeymoon never ended since I never went back. She's not wrong. At my new job, when I requested time off for our anniversary, my manager simply said, "Have a great time. Don't even think about work." And that's how I know I made the right choice. Even now, months after everything happened, I sometimes find myself sitting back and thinking about how close I came to giving in, to letting the pressure and the threats wear me down until I agreed to sacrifice my honeymoon for a company that would never have returned that loyalty. The truth is, in that moment when my manager said, "Have a great time. Don't even think about work," I felt something shift deep inside me. It wasn't just relief. It was validation. It was the realization that there are workplaces out there that treat people like human beings instead of endless resources to be drained. It was proof that I hadn't been wrong to stand my ground, even when 3 of the most senior people in my old company were trying to corner me into compliance. In the weeks that followed my move to the new job, life settled into a rhythm that I hadn't known for years. I actually had evenings to spend with my wife without feeling guilty for not logging back in. We cooked dinner together. We took walks around the neighborhood. We watched movies without my phone buzzing every 10 minutes with urgent messages that somehow never turned out to be truly urgent. I could sleep through the night without waking up at 3 a.m., wondering if I had missed an email or if a project was about to collapse without me. Every now and then, news about my former company would find its way to me. Sometimes through industry gossip, sometimes through former colleagues who reached out just to share the latest twist. I heard about the mass resignations, the clients who pulled their contracts, the desperate recruitment efforts that fell flat because the company's reputation had taken such a public beating. I learned that the CEO was scrambling to spin the narrative, blaming miscommunication and social media overreaction, while never once admitting that years of overwork and neglect had created the perfect storm for their downfall. One former colleague told me that my resignation email had been printed out and passed around in the office like a piece of contraband. People were whispering in hallways, saying they wished they'd had the courage to do the same thing long ago. Another confessed that my story had given them the push they needed to finally walk away from a job that had been slowly crushing them. That, more than anything, made me feel that what happened had a purpose beyond just my own boundaries. My wife and I sometimes joke that our honeymoon never really ended, not because we're still traveling or living without responsibilities, but because I never went back to that old life where my worth was measured in how much of myself I was willing to sacrifice. We've started making plans for the future, talking about buying a house next year, and maybe starting a family not long after that. And I know that if that day comes, I'll want to be fully present, not half distracted by a project deadline or a Slack notification. The funny thing is, I don't hate my old bosses. I don't even think about them with anger anymore. What I feel is more like a quiet sadness that they couldn't see the value in letting people breathe, rest, and live their lives outside of work. I sometimes wonder if they ever stopped to think about what could have been different if they just said, "Enjoy your wedding. We'll cover things here." Maybe they'd still have their clients. Maybe they'd still have their team. Maybe they wouldn't have sold the company in a fire sale just to keep the doors open. But that's not my problem anymore. And that's the freedom I fought for without even realizing it at first. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that no job is worth giving up your personal life for. Companies will replace you in a week if they have to, but the moments you miss with the people you love can never be replaced. And now, whenever someone asks me for advice about work boundaries, I tell them exactly what I learned the hard way. If they're asking you to choose between your happiness and their bottom line, choose yourself every single time. In the end, I realized that walking away wasn't just about escaping a toxic workplace. It was about choosing the life I wanted to live. It was about proving to myself that my time, my energy, and my happiness were worth protecting. My wedding and honeymoon were perfect, not because everything went exactly as planned, but because I was truly there, fully present, sharing every laugh, every sunset, every quiet moment with the person I love most in this world. Looking back, the viral attention, the collapse of the company, the job offers, and the industry buzz were all just side effects. The real victory was sitting across from my wife in a little seaside cafe in Greece, knowing I'd made the right call, that I'd chosen us over a job that would never have chosen me. And that's something I'll never regret. Now, whenever I hear about someone being pressured to sacrifice their personal life for work, I tell them my story. Not to boast, not to relive old drama, but to remind them that they have a choice too. You can always get another job, but you'll never get another first dance, another honeymoon, another once-in-a-lifetime moment. And no email, no meeting, and no deadline will ever be worth missing that. Because in the end, work will forget you the moment you're gone. But the people you love will remember that you showed up when it mattered most. And that, more than anything, is why I know I made the right choice.